I didn't choose my life. I accepted it. And for years, I told myself those two things were the same. My name is Daniel. I'm 48 years old, married, financially stable, and respected by people who don't really know me. From the outside, my life looks like a success story. From the inside, it feels like a long, quiet compromise. The first time I realized something was wrong, nothing dramatic happened. No breakdown. No shouting. No crisis. Just a thought. Is this really my life? The thought arrived one evening while I was sitting at the dinner table with my wife, listening to a conversation I had heard 1,000 times before. We talked about schedules, bills, and weekend plans we didn't care about. She smiled. I smiled back. And I felt completely absent. Not unhappy. Absent. I had done everything I was supposed to do. Studied a safe profession. Married the right person. Bought the house at the right time. Built a routine that impressed everyone except the part of me that actually wanted to live. My parents used to say, stability is happiness. So I built stability. What they didn't tell me was that stability without desire feels like emotional sleep. I didn't hate my life. I just didn't feel it. My wife, Anna, is a good person. Kind. Reliable. Predictable. We don't fight. We don't scream. We don't deeply connect either. Our marriage is quiet. Too quiet. People confuse peace with silence. But silence can be lonely when it lasts too long. We became partners in logistics, not in dreams. The truth is, I married her because it made sense. She loved me. Our families approved. Life became easier. Love became optional. At least, that's what I told myself. The real problem wasn't my marriage. It was my passivity. I let life happen to me instead of choosing it. Every time I felt uncertain, I chose what was expected. Every time I felt restless, I chose what was comfortable. Every time I wanted more, I told myself more is dangerous. So I chose less. Less emotion. Less risk. Less honesty. Over time, I became very good at performing a life. But I forgot how to live one. The cracks didn't appear suddenly. They grew slowly, in small invisible moments. Like when I stopped talking about my dreams. Like when I stopped feeling excited about the future. Like when I realized I couldn't remember the last time I felt truly alive. One afternoon, a younger colleague asked me, "Do you love what you do?" The question felt harmless. But it hit like a quiet explosion. I opened my mouth to answer. Nothing came out. Not because I didn't know the truth. Because I had avoided it for too long. I didn't hate my job. I didn't love it either. I had chosen it because it was reasonable. And reason, over time, had replaced passion. At home, Anna noticed my distance. "You seem tired lately," she said. "I'm fine," I replied. That became my favorite lie. Fine is a comfortable word. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't demand change. Fine allows you to stay where you are. But staying where you are for too long turns into emotional stagnation. One night, I couldn't sleep. I walked into the living room and sat in the dark, staring at the wall. The house was silent. Not peaceful. Empty. I realized something painful. I wasn't living my life. I was maintaining it. There's a difference. Living requires choices. Maintaining requires obedience. And I had been obedient for decades. I had obeyed expectations. I had obeyed tradition. I had obeyed fear. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of starting over. Fear of wanting something different. So I became someone predictable. And predictable slowly became invisible. Not to others. To myself. The worst part, no one forced me into this life. I built it with my own quiet compliance. Every "it's fine." Every "maybe later." Every "this is good enough." Good enough is the most dangerous sentence in the world. Because it kills dreams politely. One evening, while cleaning out an old drawer, I found a notebook from my 20s. Inside were ideas for stories, travel plans, and wild goals written in careless handwriting. The man who wrote those pages believed life was supposed to feel intense. I barely recognized him. I felt grief. Not for a person who died. For a person who stopped existing. That night, I asked myself a question I had avoided for years. If I could choose again, would I choose this life? The answer scared me. No. Not because it was bad. But because it wasn't mine. I had chosen a life that looked good. Not one that felt true. And now, at 48, I was standing in the middle of a life that belonged more to expectations than to my own heart. The realization didn't break me. It quietly woke me up. And waking up, I discovered, was far more painful than staying asleep. After that night, something inside me refused to fall back asleep. I still went to work. I still came home on time. I still kissed Anna on the cheek and asked about her day. But my thoughts had changed. Every routine felt louder. Every felt heavier. Every fine sounded like a lie I was tired of repeating. I started noticing how carefully my life was designed to avoid discomfort. My schedule had no room for spontaneity. My conversations had no room for depth. My future had no room for uncertainty. It was safe. And safety had become my prison. Anna and I talked more, but not better. We discussed groceries, neighbors, weekend plans. We never talked about dreams. Not hers. Not mine. Dreams are dangerous when you've ignored them too long. One evening, she said, "We should renovate the kitchen." I nodded automatically. Then I realized how strange it was. We were redesigning rooms in a life we had never questioned. It felt easier to change walls than to change direction. At work, a colleague announced he was leaving to start his own business. People congratulated him. Admired his courage. I felt something sharp in my chest. Not jealousy. Recognition. He was choosing uncertainty. I had chosen predictability. And predictability had slowly erased me. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I stood in front of the mirror and tried to see myself honestly. Who was I? Not my job. Not my marriage. Not my responsibilities. Just me. The answer was uncomfortable. I didn't know anymore. I had become a collection of roles instead of a person. Husband. Employee. Son. Responsible adult. But where was Daniel? I started remembering moments I had buried. The times I wanted to travel but stayed home. The stories I wanted to write but never finished. The feelings I never expressed because they felt inconvenient. I had treated my own desires like a problem to be managed. Over time, I managed them into silence. Anna noticed the distance growing. "You're different lately," she said one night. "I'm just tired," I replied. Another lie. Not tired. Awake. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, watching something neither of us cared about. The room felt full, but I felt alone. That loneliness wasn't new. I had just stopped ignoring it. I began taking long walks after work. Not to escape, to think. The city felt different when I wasn't rushing through it. I noticed small details, strangers laughing, couples arguing, people actually feeling something. They looked alive. Messy. Real. I felt like I had been watching life through glass for years. One evening, I walked past a small cafe with live music. A man was playing guitar inside. His voice wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Something in my chest tightened. I used to play. Not well. But with feeling. I had stopped because it didn't fit my life. Now my life didn't feel like it fit me. I realized something painful. I hadn't lost myself in a single moment. I had given myself away in small, reasonable pieces. A safe job. A sensible marriage. A predictable future. Each choice made sense. Together, they built a life that didn't feel like mine. One night, Anna asked, "Are you happy?" The question wasn't aggressive. It was curious. I opened my mouth to say yes. But the word didn't come out. Silence filled the space between us. Not angry silence. Honest silence. "I don't know," I finally said. Her eyes changed. Not with anger. With worry. "We have a good life," she said. "We have a stable life," I replied quietly. The difference between those two words felt enormous. Stability doesn't ask for your soul. Happiness does. We didn't argue. We just sat there, realizing we were living in the same house but different emotional worlds. That night, I wrote something in a notebook for the first time in years. I am not unhappy. I am unfinished. The sentence scared me. Because it meant something could change. And change is dangerous when you've built your entire identity on consistency. Over the next weeks, I felt like a stranger in my own routine. Everything felt scripted. Predictable. Controlled. I wasn't living badly. I was living cautiously, and caution, when stretched over decades, becomes regret. I started asking myself harder questions. Who would I be if no one expected anything from me? What would I choose if fear wasn't in charge? What part of me had I silenced to keep my life comfortable? The answers were quiet. But they were clear. I had silenced myself. To be accepted. To be stable. To be safe. And in doing so, I had built a life that belonged more to expectations than to my own heart. The scariest part: nothing was wrong enough to force change. No crisis. No collapse. No disaster. Just a slow, quiet realization. Sometimes, the most dangerous life is the one that feels good enough. Because it never pushes you to become who you actually are. And I was starting to understand that the life I had accepted, wasn't the life I wanted. The realization didn't come with fireworks. It came with silence. A deep, heavy silence that followed me everywhere: into the kitchen, into the bedroom, into conversations that felt more like rituals than connections. I wasn't angry at my life. I was grieving it. Not because it was bad. But because it was borrowed. Borrowed from expectations. Borrowed from tradition. Borrowed from fear. One evening, Anna and I sat at the table without the television on for the first time in years. No background noise. No distractions. Just two people who had learned how to coexist without truly connecting. She looked at me carefully. "You've been distant," she said. "Not physically. Emotionally." I didn't deny it. "I think I've been distant for a long time," I replied. She didn't argue. That scared me more than any conflict could have. We talked. Slowly. Honestly. About things we had avoided for years. Not about bills. Not about schedules. Not about plans. About us. Or what was left of us. "I feel like we became a routine," she said quietly. "Not a relationship." Her words didn't hurt. They clarified. We hadn't failed each other through betrayal or cruelty. We had failed through passivity. Through silence. Through comfort. Through never asking what we truly wanted. I realized something painful. We didn't choose each other. We accepted each other. And acceptance without intention slowly turns into emotional distance. "I don't know who I am anymore," I admitted. She looked at me with sadness, not anger. I don't know if I ever knew who you were, she said. The room felt heavier after that. Not with blame. With truth. We didn't separate that night. We didn't make dramatic decisions. We just sat there, realizing that sometimes two people can build a life together without building a connection. And connection is the part that makes life feel real. The next weeks felt strange. Familiar routines, unfamiliar emotions. I walked through my days like someone watching their own life from the outside. But I wasn't numb anymore. I was aware. Awareness is uncomfortable. It forces you to see what you've been avoiding. I started doing small, quiet things for myself, not to escape. To reconnect. I played guitar again, even though my fingers were stiff and my chords imperfect. The sound wasn't beautiful. But it was mine. I wrote without thinking about structure or quality. Just thoughts. Feelings. Memories I had ignored. I wasn't trying to become someone new. I was trying to remember who I was. Anna noticed. You seem more alive, she said one evening. Or maybe I just stopped hiding, I replied. We talked more honestly after that. About our fears. Our regrets. Our emotional distance. We didn't discover hidden passion. We discovered clarity. And clarity doesn't always save relationships. Sometimes, it simply tells you the truth. One night, she said, I think we've been living parallel lives. Together, but separate. I nodded. Not because I agreed. Because I finally understood. We hadn't failed. We had simply outgrown the version of ourselves that once made sense. And growth isn't always romantic. Sometimes, it's quiet. We decided to separate. Not with anger. With respect. Two people acknowledging that staying comfortable wasn't the same as staying honest. The house felt emptier after she left. But my chest felt lighter. Not relieved. Just truthful. I started living alone for the first time in my adult life. No shared routines. No silent compromises. No emotional autopilot. Just me. At first, the silence felt loud. Then it felt honest. I spent time walking without destinations. Listening to music that actually moved me. Writing without caring who would read it. Life didn't become exciting. It became authentic. I realized something important. I didn't need a dramatic reinvention. I needed permission to be myself. And no one was going to give me that permission. I had to take it. I stopped asking, is this reasonable? I started asking, is this real? The difference was life-changing. Not loudly. Quietly. Months passed. Not magically. Naturally. Some days were lonely. Some days were peaceful. But none of them felt empty. Because emptiness isn't about being alone. It's about being disconnected from yourself. And I wasn't anymore. One evening, sitting in my small apartment, guitar resting against the wall, notebook on the table, I thought about the man I had been for most of my life. The man who chose safety. The man who avoided uncertainty. The man who believed stability was enough. I didn't hate him. I understood him. He was afraid. Afraid of standing out. Afraid of disappointing others. Afraid of wanting more than he was supposed to want. So he chose less. Less risk. Less emotion. Less honesty. And in doing so, he built a life that looked good and felt empty. I didn't want to live like that anymore. Not because my life had been wrong. Because it hadn't been mine. The truth is, most of us don't lose ourselves through tragedy. We lose ourselves through comfort. Through routine. Through expectations. Through the quiet agreement to live a life that makes sense instead of one that feels true. I didn't wake up one day and become fearless. I became aware. And awareness changes everything. Because once you see the difference between living and maintaining, you can't unsee it. I don't know what my future looks like. And for the first time, that doesn't scare me. Uncertainty feels more honest than stability without meaning. I don't need to impress anyone anymore. I just need to recognize myself. And when I look in the mirror now, I don't see a perfect man. I see a real one. Someone who finally chose his own life. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just truthfully. And sometimes, choosing your own life is the bravest confession you can make.